Oh, hello. I have officially retired the Trump hat, Make America Great Again. I'm having some coffee. Yesterday, I used my Neuroptimal tablet, and today I used my rifle machine. And right now, I'm going to go through Mark 5. Then they came to the other side of the sea, into the region of the Gerasenes. And when he got out of the boat, immediately a man from the tombs with an unclean spirit met him, who had his dwelling among the tombs, and no one was able to bind him any more, even with a chain, because he had often been bound with shackles and chains, and the chains had been torn apart by him, and the shackles broken into pieces. And no one was strong enough to subdue him. And constantly, night and day, among the tombs and in the mountains, he was crying out and gnashing himself with stones. And seeing Jesus from a distance, he ran up and bowed down before him, and crying out with a loud voice, he said, "What do I have to do with you, Jesus, the Son of the Most High God? I implore you, by God, do not torment me." For he had been saying to him, "Come out of the man, you unclean spirit." And he was asking him, "What is your name?" And he said to him, "My name is Legion, for we are many." And he began pleading with him earnestly not to send them out of the region. Now there was a large herd of swine feeding nearby on the mountain. And the demons pleaded with him, saying, "Send us into the swine, so that we may enter them." And Jesus gave them permission, and coming out, the unclean spirits entered the swine, and the herd rushed down the steep bank into the sea, about 2,000 of them, and they were drowned in the sea. And their herdsmen ran away and reported it in the city and in the countryside, and the people came to see what it was that had happened. And they came to Jesus and observed the demon-possessed man sitting down, clothed, and in his right mind, the very man who had the legion, and they became frightened. And those who had seen it recounted to them how this had happened to the demon-possessed man, and all about the swine. And they began to plead with him to leave their region. And he was getting into the boat, and the man who had been demon-possessed was pleading with him that he might accompany him. And he did not let him, but he said to him, "Go to your people and report to them what great things the Lord has done for you, and how he had mercy on you." And he went away and began to preach in the Decapolis what great things Jesus had done for him, and everyone was marveling. So we make it across the sea from chapter 4 to 5. We enter into the region of the Gerasenes. There is a major city and a town. One is from the Gadarenes and one's the Gerasenes. So another gospel writer mentions this area and mentions a different name. The demon-possessed man lived in the tombs, and he came and confronted Jesus, and he knew who Jesus was. And when he approached Jesus, "What do I have to do with you, Jesus, Son of the Most High God?" Now, another gospel writer mentions two men, and here Mark only mentions one. I suppose that this man with legion was the representative of the two and of all the demons. Jesus commands the spirit to come out of him. And the name Legion, I believe it's 5,000 is a size. So whether his name was Legion, the demon, or demons, or if that was just a pseudonym, just a name that he gave himself. Once again, narrative, fast-paced, gripping narrative. And Jesus has power over this legion, over these multitudes of demons, and the demons knew it. They didn't want to go to hell. They didn't want to be tormented. And for whatever reason, they wanted to go into the pigs. They didn't want to go out of the region. They wanted to go to the pigs. I don't know why they wanted to go to the pigs. That's an interesting concept. Jesus allows them to go into the pigs. He commanded them. He gave them permission, so it's kind of both. And there were 2,000 pigs. So you have demon-possessed pigs now. More than one per pig, because if there was a legion, which is at least 5,000, a legion is 5,000, but there was a host of demons in these two men, and 2,000 pigs, and they all did a swine dive and committed suicide. And yeah, the people who were taking care of the pigs reported it to the city, and the people came out and observed the demon-possessed man. They were once again afraid of the man for however long. They left him alone. He was not someone you wanted to be around. And here they're observing the man who had the legion, clothed and in his right mind. He was no longer naked. And then they became frightened. They were afraid of the demon-possessed man, but now they're even more afraid of who? Of Jesus. And they began to plead with him to leave their region. As he was getting into the boat, the man who had the legion wanted to come with Jesus. Jesus tells him to go home to your people and report to them what great things the Lord has done for you and how he had mercy on you. We find in this region a church or a group of believers in the book of Acts. One day when we go through and do a deeper dive, we will make mention of that. These early videos of mine are just, hey, read and teach. Very surface level. Thank you. And when Jesus had crossed over again in the boat to the other side, a large crowd gathered around him. So he stayed by the seashore, and one of the synagogue officials named Jairus came up and, seeing him, fell at his feet and pleaded with him earnestly, saying, "My little daughter is at the point of death. Please come, that by coming you may lay your hands on her, so that she will be saved and live." And he went off with him, and a large crowd was following him and pressing in on him. The man had enough faith to know who Jesus was and what he could do. And a woman who had a hemorrhage for 12 years and had endured much at the hands of many physicians and had spent all that she had and was not helped at all, but rather had grown worse, after hearing about Jesus, she came up in the crowd behind him and touched his garment. For she was saying, "If I touch his garments, I will be saved from this." And immediately the flow of her blood was dried up, and she knew within her body that she had been healed of her affliction. So the woman was hopeless. She spent all her money. She tried. She was desperate. She was exiled from the people. She was unclean, and she tried her best. But when Jesus was around, she knew that all she had to do was touch his garment. She believed in what Jesus was doing in the area and the world, what Jesus was doing so much that all she had to do was touch his clothes, that he didn't need to specifically address her, or that she didn't have to request. She had the request in her heart that all she had to do is touch his clothes. And obviously Jesus was preaching in Jerusalem and the surrounding areas, not the whole world, but to them it was their whole world. To this woman, her illness was her whole world, and she was desperate, and she knew that Jesus could heal her. And so she touched his clothes in the midst of the crowd, and immediately Jesus, perceiving in himself that the power proceeding from him had gone forth, turned around in the crowd and was saying, "Who touched my garments?" Now, Jesus knew who touched his garments. I will get to why he did this in a moment. And his disciples were saying to him, "You see the crowd pressing in on you, and you say, 'Who touched me?'" So obviously, it's like redundant. Jesus, everybody's touching you, and you're asking us, "Who touched you?" Like, obviously, everybody's touching you. And he was looking around to see the woman who had done this. He knew where she was. She knew that she had been exposed. She was the only one besides Jesus who knew that the touch, the interaction had happened. Everyone else was preoccupied. And he was looking around to see the woman who had done this. But the woman, fearing and trembling, aware of what had happened to her, came and fell down before him and told him the whole truth. So she confessed everything, not just in front of Jesus, but the crowd also. And why did Jesus have this happen? Why did this interaction happen? When the crowd is touching Jesus, she touches him, and he stops everything. He stops what he's doing. He stops what everybody else is doing and addresses this woman in the midst of going to heal this woman's daughter. Jesus is imperturbable. That means not irritated when stopped in what you're doing, which is an interesting concept given my current events. I need to do a word study on imperturbable and try to apply that more. So to be like Jesus. So if the woman would have only been healed and no one would have known about it, she still would have been an outcast, because the issue of blood she had, no one would have known that she was healed, and the social stigma would still be there. But Jesus stops what he's doing and addresses the woman. That way, everyone around knows that she has been healed. And he said to her, "Daughter, your faith has saved you. Go in peace and be healed of your affliction." While he was still speaking, they came from the house of the synagogue official, saying, "Your daughter has died. Why trouble the teacher any more?" But Jesus, overhearing what had been spoken, said to the synagogue official, "Do not be afraid, only believe." And he allowed no one to accompany him except Peter and James and John, the brother of James. And they came to the house of the synagogue official, and he saw a commotion, and people loudly crying and wailing. And entering in, he said to them, "Why are you making a commotion and crying? The child has not died, but is asleep." And then began laughing at him. Well, so this young girl has died. There's a funeral going on. There's people crying and mourning. And Jesus says, "Don't cry, she's asleep." And now, from crying, they're laughing at him. Well, that's a pretty hard stop and turn and pivot. Why and how are they able to go from mourning to laughing and mocking when they're supposed to be sad? Well, most likely these were the professional criers. They're hired, or they're brought in for somehow to set the tone of there's a mourning going on. So they professionally cry. That way everyone coming in can hear these loud, dramatic cries. And Jesus basically tells them to stop. Why are you making this commotion? The child has not died, but is asleep. So they should have known that the official went to go find Jesus and bring him. And so she's died in the process before he's gotten there. They should have faith in Jesus but obviously don't. And they're not really, they don't really care about the little girl. I would not the family. The family obviously cares. The head of the household, the father, went to go get Jesus. He cares about his daughter. But the professional mourners don't care. They're just doing their job. They're crying, quote unquote, and Jesus says stop, and they began to laugh. They don't believe Jesus, and they didn't really care to begin with. But putting them all out, he took along the child's father and mother and his own companions and entered the room where the child was. And taking the child by the hand, he said to her, Talitha cum. Sounds right? Talitha cum, which translated means, little girl, I say to you, arise. Now, once again, in my future deeper study, I will look up this word. Obviously, it translates, little girl, I say to you, arise. What language is Talitha cum? And then translated into Greek, or translated into what? Maybe it's Aramaic. And then little girl, I say to you, arise, when Mark writes, obviously isn't in English, but Mark translates it to Greek, most likely. It's the best guess of mine right now. So why did Jesus speak in Aramaic? Good question. Maybe I'll find that out one day. And immediately the little girl stood up and began to walk, for she was about 12 years old, so she was old enough to walk. And immediately they were completely astounded, shock and awe. And he gave them strict orders that no one should know about this, and he said that some food should be given to her to eat. She's probably been sick for days and days and hasn't eaten. The best practice would be to not eat while you're sick. So she probably hasn't eaten for a day or two or so. And then she's dead. She's been dead probably a couple hours, or asleep, soul sleep. And Jesus gives her back her soul, her spirit, into her body. Her body's most likely weak and drained somehow, or at least hasn't had food. And she needs food, and so he says that. Very interesting. Shock and awe is the theme of Mark's gospel, and that is what we have read today. Shock and awe, another confession of a demon that Jesus is God, the Son of God, that he is deity, and lessons for us and for the disciples and everyone around of Jesus's deity. That is the reason for Mark's gospel. And we are left, verse 41, completely astounded with the audience and the listeners. Hopefully you've enjoyed. Thank you so much. Do appreciate it.